Doctor Who might be on hiatus again, but the War Between the Land and the Sea should be coming this year. Okay, so this video or podcast episode, whatever it ends up being, is mostly going to be talking about some stuff that's been announced or written about in the new issue of Doctor Who magazine. I'm obviously not going to be going over the whole thing. I haven't actually got it with me. I haven't bought this issue, but obviously there's been some big quotes, specifically from Russell's article, that have been posted online, kind of talking about the future of the show. And obviously that's the main thing people were interested in seeing with this new issue of Doctor Who magazine, as it's obviously the main talking point that they're going to be talking about in the issue itself. But honestly, we haven't really got the answers that we were kind of hoping for with this issue of Doctor Who magazine, but obviously I'm going to get into that in this video. So it all started off with the announcement of the cover of the new issue of Doctor Who magazine, which was obviously announced a couple of days before it went on sale. And this was the cover of the new issue of Doctor Who magazine. Obviously, straight off the bat, we can already see that this isn't a specially set up shoot with Billie Piper as the Doctor or whoever she's going to be playing. It's still just a still from the episode itself, with what is likely her head photoshopped onto Ncuti's body, which is also basically what they did in the episode itself. Although I'm not 100% sure, it does seem that way, but if you look at her arm that you can see in this image, that doesn't look like they've just changed the skin tone of Ncuti's arm, which in itself is a little bit weird, because Ncuti is significantly more muscular than that, but you can tell that the face that is on here is just a shot from the episode itself that looks like it's been photoshopped on here. Obviously, on the cover itself, it says Billie Piper is the Doctor, but there is a question mark at the end of the word Doctor, and obviously a lot of people have been speculating whether or not she is actually playing the Doctor or something else, because she wasn't credited as the Doctor in the credits for the episode itself. And to be honest, like I said in my review, I don't think even they know yet, the people that are making the show, Russell or Billie Piper or anyone. And honestly, the article in this issue of the magazine kind of suggests that as well, but obviously we'll be getting into that later on. But the other big standout of this cover for the magazine that had me, and I assume a lot of other people, worried before the magazine itself was even released, is the quote on the top that says, "Russell T Davies on pathways to potential futures," which honestly just didn't fill me with much hope before this magazine got released, and the article itself personally doesn't fill me with that much hope either, as it just kind of suggests that even they don't know what's going on with the show at the moment. And if people were hoping for any answers about what's coming for the future of Doctor Who in this magazine, that doesn't fill us with much hope that that's what we're getting, and we didn't really get that in this magazine either. So without further ado, let's get into this main article from Doctor Who magazine. So here's the main image of the main article from this issue of Doctor Who magazine that I've seen floating around on Twitter. There is some highlighted parts of the article in this particular image, which are mostly going to be the things that I'm going to be talking about. I'm not going to be going over and reading this whole article. A lot of it is about the plans for season 1 and 2, with this image in the middle that is basically what Russell wrote down for the plans for both seasons, that gives some ideas about the episodes that ended up getting made, and they're basically exactly the same, but obviously they don't all have their titles sorted or anything like that yet. For example, for season 1, episode 6 is crossed out, and they probably didn't know what that episode was going to be at that point and who was going to be writing it. I think somewhere in this article, Russell suggests that he might have had Anua Ellams down for the first season for episode 6, and that got moved to season 2. And the big thing with this image as well is basically Russell is suggesting that everything went to plan pretty much. There were barely any changes for these first 2 seasons, and everything that we saw was pretty much going according to plan, which I just don't know if I believe. He does say that this wasn't written like before any of the episodes had been made and stuff like that, so he's not completely like saying that he wrote this list on a board before anything got filmed or anything got written. But the fact that he's suggesting everything has gone to plan, I just personally don't believe. I mean, most of it is likely from the reality war that things didn't go to plan, but there's still other things that assumedly didn't quite go to plan, such as Millie Gibson not staying on as the main companion for season 2 and stuff like that. Another interesting thing about this is the original idea for the first part of the finale for season 1, which was originally titled The Raid instead of The Legend of Ruby Ruby Sunday and had a very different plot that still kind of led to the same thing and the same cliffhanger, but it was almost like a heist episode, which sounded quite interesting, where it was basically some sort of standoff between Triad Technologies Tower and Unit Tower, and there was going to be some sort of heist of Triad Tower in that episode, which ultimately led to the reveal of Sutek. And it does sound like a very interesting plot. I would have been interested to see how that went if that would have been the episode itself. It did sound very interesting, but even though I wasn't really a big fan of Empire of Death, Legend of Ruby Sunday, at least on first viewing, I think worked really well. So I'm not too annoyed that we didn't get this episode that he initially planned for this season. And like he says in here, it was mostly just ideas. It wasn't like written down. It wasn't like the original script or anything like that. But it would have definitely been interesting to see. But anyway, this isn't really the main part of this article that I want to go over. A lot of it is mostly at the end of this article. One of the things highlighted here is, like I was saying, where Russell says, but everything else, yes, very much went as planned. And changes were made as we went along, which I think personally is definitely understating a lot of what went on with this era, because there's definitely been a lot of major changes that had to be made for this, in my opinion. So it's not like he's completely denying it, but it does feel like he's kind of undercutting it a little bit. And then this quote right at the very end, it's basically like the last paragraph or two of this article, is kind of the most important part and most important quote of this issue of Doctor Who magazine. So I'm going to read it out in full. This quote reads, "No, not the end, don't be mad. Doctor Who will never end. There are pathways leading to potential futures. We've still got the mystery of that bright and blazing ending. Oh, hello. Yes, indeed. Hello, Billy. And there's Susan, of course. I wonder if we'll ever find out who the boss is, or who the boss are. I'm still wondering who Gus is from Mummy on the Orient Express. Maybe they're the same. But we don't know what's happening yet. And while everyone works that out, I'll take a pause on this page. Thanks for reading. And thanks to DWM. A delight to work with you on this wonderful magazine. Hopefully we'll have news soon, and certainly the war between the land and the sea is about to break out. So there are great things ahead. Until then, it has been an absolute joy." So there's a lot to break down in this last couple of paragraphs, but it doesn't sound great. Obviously, there's that quote that was on the front cover of this issue, where he says there are pathways leading to potential futures, which just kind of sounds like they have a few ideas, but they don't really know what's going to be going on or what the future of the show is. He also obviously makes the comment about Billy Piper's return, which to me just really suggests that he doesn't really know what's going on with it, and they've just kind of chucked it in there, which was my speculation to begin with, because they haven't said what's going on with her. He's just given some kind of vague questions about who she could be, because I think he honestly doesn't know who she is yet either, which I already didn't like that ending of the reality war as it was, and this just makes me like it even less, because it just makes everyone so unsure about what's going to be happening with the show in future. He also mentions Susan. Obviously, I feel like there was meant to be more of Susan in the reality war setting up the next season, but honestly, if he knew going in that 2 seasons was the only guarantee for this Disney Plus era, he should have wrapped it up in these 2 seasons instead of setting it up for a season that might not happen at this point. Like, sure, we are probably going to get a season 3 or series 16 or whatever it is in the future, but for all we know, the plan is just going to completely change. We might have somebody else in charge, and these threads that have been left dangling from these past 2 seasons just might never get resolved, which is how I'm feeling about that quote about the boss as well. It seems like he's just kind of thrown the words "the boss" in these scripts for these past couple of seasons without knowing who it is, because he doesn't sound confident in this, that he actually has any plans. This doesn't sound like him teasing who the boss is going to be and teasing these future seasons where the boss is going to show up and we're going to be finding out who the boss is. It sounds like he just doesn't know who the boss is, because he's saying, or who the boss are, as if they're multiple people. He's then also making connections to Gus from Mummy on the Orient Express. I think he just honestly has no idea what he's going to be doing with the boss, with Susan, with Billy Piper. And it seems like as well he has no idea what's going to be happening with the future of the show, because he says, but we don't know what's happening yet. And he then obviously says he's not going to be writing these articles for DWM for the future as well until everything's sorted out, which just kind of sounds like he's kind of basically leaving it for a bit, which is especially weird given that, like he said earlier, the war between the land and the sea should be coming out as well. It's like, why doesn't he stay on to write some notes on that, some articles on that, and do some publicity for that show? He co-wrote it with Pete McTighe, and so it just feels a bit weird that he's leaving now, and it also makes me wonder if he even feels like he's going to be staying on to write the show in the future. We know he said he has ideas for the next couple of seasons of the show, but obviously he doesn't seem to know when these seasons are going to be happening yet, and it seems like he might even be unsure now on if he's going to be returning at all, and these dangling plot threads that I was on about earlier might just get dropped if that is the case. And this could be lending more credence to the leak or kind of insider information that I've seen recently, which isn't plot related, it's just about potential streaming platforms that are wanting to take on the show and how they might not be happy with Russell and are basically trying to kick him out, and Bad Wolf are kind of standing with Russell and trying to make sure he stays on the show, which for me just makes me really worry that both Russell and Bad Wolf are going to get kicked out and be replaced by someone else, although that might not be the end of the world, to be honest, if that does happen. But it does just make me worry because Russell's left these plot threads dangling, and now they just might not get resolved because they might get kicked off and somebody else will end up taking over and we'll just be starting from scratch again, basically. So we're not going to see any of this stuff with Susan, we're not going to find out who the boss is, and maybe like the Billy Piper reveal will just get reverted at the start of the next episode or completely ignored, which is just going to be so weird if that happens. Obviously, for me personally, I think the show is going to continue in some form. It just seems like at the moment pretty much no one, including the production team itself, knows what form that is going to be. But given that we've had the recent announcement of the CBeebies Doctor Who show, it seems like the BBC do at least want to keep making the show. They just don't know what form the main show is going to take. It seems like Russell doesn't even know what form the show is going to take, and like I said, it seems like he doesn't know what this whole twist with Billy Piper is. He just kind of threw it in there hoping that the show would get renewed because of it, and now it's just kind of left us on a really sour note to end the show on if we do go on hiatus for a little bit, which I think is very likely to happen. Now, I don't think this is going to be as big or as long of a hiatus as we got back in the Wilderness years after the 7th Doctor's era of the show ended in 1989, but I do think we're going to see at least an 18-month gap here, personally, but let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Obviously, I just mentioned the CBeebies show as well. I've done a whole video on that last week. If you want to check that out, I'll make sure to have that linked somewhere as well. But that's not everything. We have got The War Between the Land and the Sea apparently coming later this year. I'm not sure where that was mentioned in this issue of the magazine. Obviously, it mentions The War Between the Land and the Sea at the bottom of this article, but it doesn't specifically mention that it's coming this year. It just says that it's about to break out. But I have seen some people confirming that it is definitely coming at the end of this year, which is what they were originally saying a while back, but obviously a lot of us have been speculating that it might come next year instead because they might be wanting to push it back. It seems as we're not getting the main show for a bit, but apparently it's been announced somewhere that it is definitely coming later this year. So we have still got that to look forward to, which is why I think it's weird that Russell is signing off here when he's still got that show to promote and stuff like that. But speaking of The War Between the Land and the Sea, we do of course have the trailer for that we got at the end of the reality war, which I haven't really spoken about yet, and I was going to do a whole breakdown video on this trailer, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, and I'm just not sure if there'll be enough to fill a whole video on it. So whilst we're talking about it apparently coming at the end of next year because of this issue of Doctor Who magazine, I thought this would be a better time as any to quickly have a look through the trailer and break it down a little bit. So let's get into it.
The tides have drawn us together.
So we start with what can only be assumed to be UNIT doing some sort of research or scoping out this shore somewhere for what can only be assumed to be the Sea Devils. We obviously see Russell Tovey's character, who is called Barclay apparently, and we see them with like a load of cameras and lights and stuff like that, trying to get a look at, I guess, these Sea Devils emerging from the ocean or something like that. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is UNIT as well, because I'm sure that character that stood next to Barclay there is a UNIT soldier, and we see her with the UNIT logo later on in this trailer. We then get this shot of what I can only assume is a new Sea Devil redesign emerging from the ocean. Obviously, there's been a lot of people worried about the Sea Devils being redesigned in this show. I think that mostly came from the kind of leaked set photos of what I can assume is Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, who I believe is called Salt, which we got, I think, earlier this year or at some point last year, which looked significantly different to the Sea Devils that we've seen before, whereas this looks a lot closer to the original Sea Devils design. It has obviously still been redesigned quite a bit, especially from Legend of the Sea Devils, which wasn't that long ago, but this does look a lot closer to the Sea Devils than that character and that set photo that we saw a while back, and we obviously get a better look at her in this trailer as well. But if this is what the Sea Devils are going to look like, I personally don't have as much of an issue with it. I will have had an issue with it if they all looked like that other character, but this still does look reminiscent of a Sea Devil to me, and if they are going to be very integral to the show, which I imagine they will be, and they also are going to maybe need some kind of emotional and empathetic moments, it makes sense to make them a little bit more humanoid like this, instead of having the big rubber masks that we used to have for the Sea Devils, that we basically always had for the Sea Devils. So we'll have to wait and see what these look like properly. We do get a better look at them later on, which I'll discuss more when we get to that. And obviously I'll be discussing Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character and that design and what that could be later on in this video as well.
We could make a
So we see Barclay getting into what I assume is a unit helicopter.
difference, you and I.
Here we see some sort of unit base, which looks like it's not in Unit Tower to me, and I'm assuming that's Kate Stewart that we can see there as well. We see some sort of courtroom, which seems to be a big part of this show. Maybe these are all like international army figures or something like that that are in this courtroom. I'm not 100% sure. We also get what I assume is Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character saying, "We could make a difference, you and I, end the conflict between our species." So there's obviously going to be some sort of conflict going on between maybe the Sea Devils and the humans, but there is obviously another option there that I'm going to get into later. We see Barclay being led into this courtroom with that same unit character that we saw earlier on, and also Collin McFarlane's character, who I believe is meant to be the same character that he played in Torchwood Children of Earth, whose name currently escapes me, but I believe he was part of either the American division of UNIT or the American military. So I'm assuming he's still going to have his American accent in this, considering he's meant to be playing the same character. We get a shot of Kate Stewart, which seems to be in that same unit location from before, that, like I said, doesn't seem to be the unit tower.
Before it's too late.
Obviously, another shot of Barclay in that courtroom. And this is the shot of Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, who is apparently called Salt. And I believe this is the same character that we saw in those leaked set photos a while back that had people worried about a Sea Devil redesign. But obviously, like I said earlier, with that look we got at what seems to be a Sea Devil earlier on in this trailer, I'm not 100% sure whether or not she is going to be a Sea Devil. There's obviously still the speculation that people think she could be a fish person from, I believe, the Underwater Menace, which I discussed a while back in those videos as well when that set photo got leaked. And I do think that that is definitely more likely now, given that we've seen what the Sea Devils seem to look like in this show from the other shots. But I guess there's also always the possibility that maybe she's a female Sea Devil and this is what the female Sea Devils look like. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that, if that is the case. And there's also maybe the possibility that she's maybe like a Sea Devil human hybrid, but I'm not sure if they're going to go down that route either. That seems a little bit weird.
I don't know what you chose me.
We see Barclay assumedly coming out of that courtroom, followed by unit soldiers. We see Shirley Ann Bingham, so we know Ruth Madeley as Shirley Ann Bingham is going to be in this.
Me? For any of this?
We see Barclay and Salt together. I think they're underwater here, or at least near the ocean, or in something that's in the ocean here. We see Kate angrily storming into the courtroom saying, "You have to stop this," with Colonel Ibrahim just behind her and Collin McFarlane's character as well. We see this shot as well of rubbish kind of being thrown everywhere, which seems to be outside the courtroom. This is something that we saw during filming on location. We saw this particular moment being filmed. It seems like the Sea Devils, or maybe the fish people, are fighting back against the humans, probably for leaving so much rubbish in the ocean and kind of destroying their habitat. So I'm assuming that's probably also going to be a big part of this conflict between these two species. We see a lot of soldiers on this bridge, and they seem to be surrounding Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, which I believe this is from when that set photo got leaked during this particular shot being filmed, or this particular moment and scene being filmed.
Will you trust me, Barclay?
And we see Barclay and Salt once again talking to each other, seemingly near the ocean, and they obviously seem to have some sort of relationship in this show, and she's asking if he trusts her. We see Collin McFarlane and Barclay as well in the background, and a few other assumedly unit characters that look like they're dressed in some sort of diving suits or some sort of underwater suits with the unit logo on them. We also see them walking across these cliffs around the ocean as well, and this is another shot of what seems to be the redesigned Sea Devils in this show as well, which once again they do look very different to Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character in this show. So I am leaning towards the idea that she isn't a Sea Devil and these are the redesigned Sea Devils. Obviously, once again, the Sea Devils have still been redesigned either way, but they don't look like what Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character looks like. So I'm assuming she's some sort of fish person and not a Sea Devil. And so I'm a little bit more okay with this Sea Devil redesign, even though I know a lot of people probably aren't going to be very happy with this. But it's better than having the Sea Devils look like Gugu Mbatha-Raw's character, in my opinion. And I'd be interested to see it when it's like actually out and we don't get these quick glimpses of it in this trailer. We see these kind of eggs that are probably from Sea Devils or the fish people that have been kept in some sort of like body bag or something inside a lab. And that's pretty much it for the War Between the Land and the Sea trailer. Let me know if I've missed anything in this trailer in the comments down below. Let me know if I've missed anything interesting in that DWM article or somewhere else in the magazine, because I haven't read it myself personally besides that one page. And let me know what you think about the future of the show, and if it's looking bright or very dark, and if you're excited for the war between the land and the sea and what you think it's going to be like. And do you think it is coming later this year? Because I personally haven't seen that quote from DWM that says it is coming this year, so I'm not 100% sure where that's come from, if that is the case. So do you think it is definitely coming this year or being pushed back to next year, or have you seen that quote? And let me know if you have seen that quote in the comments down below. With all that being said, like I said earlier, the show does seem to still be going on in some form, and assumedly the main show will be coming back eventually. We just don't really know when that is, but we do know the show is definitely still going to be going on because we've had the recent announcement of the Doctor Who CBeebies show, as the BBC have been inviting people to pitch their version of that show on their official channels, and so assumedly that should be entering production at some point next year if all goes to plan with that. So if you want to know more about that show and see me reading the pitch document and the announcement to production companies, I covered that in my last episode of the TARDIS Coffee Break podcast, and I'll make sure to have that on screen now or linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching.